Hello and welcome to Rambler Sports Locker. We have a lot to talk about today as Loyola has continued to dominate their out-of-conference schedule.
The women's soccer team made a historic win this weekend in a grueling match against Milwaukee, while the men's soccer team held a great team to a tie.
But the story of the week came from the women's volleyball team as they continued their winning ways to capture their third straight tournament title.
This and more coming up on the Rambler Sports Locker.
The question of the day is, will Loyola Volleyball ever be stopped? They have won more games during their latest stretch than they did all last season.
They have looked fantastic.
As we said before, Loyola Volleyball won their 10th straight game on Saturday to win the Cornell Invitational. The Ramblers proved to be a terrible house guest during their time in New York. In the championship game, they swept host Cornell in 3 sets to win the tournament. Standout outside hitter Morgan Reardon was named MVP of the weekend. Maureen Carls and Steph Kineen were also chosen for the all-tournament team.
Sunday was a proud moment for the Ramblers when the women's soccer team made a strong comeback to make history. For the first time since 1994, Loyola took home a victory against Milwaukee on the Panthers' home field. The Ramblers battled back from an early deficit in the first 13 minutes, but managed to tie the game by halftime. Ramblers took the lead in the second half with a curling shot made by Madison Kimball and protected the win, which moved the Ramblers to a 5-3-2 overall.
On a number from 0 to 100, pick a number.
We should let our expert pick. Over to Blake Keller for By the Numbers.
Hey Sports Locker fans, Blake Keller here with By the Numbers. In spirit of the NHL preseason and amazing rivalry to kick it off, I looked at players of the Chicago Blackhawks and my hometown team, the Detroit Red Wings. After careful consideration, the lucky number I chose was 88. However, the player who wears number 88 might not be so lucky. Patrick Kane is the right winger for the Blackhawks and also under investigation over alleged sexual assault charges in his home state of New York. Kane's status for the season is unclear right now as the grand jury begins their proceedings. If Kane is charged, it'll likely lead to an immediate suspension from the NHL. Yikes. On to more monumental accolades, Kathy Whitworth holds one of the most famous records in golf history. You guessed it, Whitworth has won 88 victories over a span of 23 years. It started with the Kelly Girls Open title in 1962 and ended with the United Virginia Bank Classic in 1985. Other major awards include the LPGA Championship and the Western Open. As Whitworth would say, no one ever conquers golf. Way to stay humble, Kathy. And he's off, number 88 that is. 88 is the speedy number of NASCAR driver Dale Earnhardt Jr. Earnhardt Jr. started his career in the early 2000s with the famous number and Budweiser-sponsored Chevrolet. The red Budweiser car won the Daytona 500 in 2004. In 2007, Earnhardt Jr. announced his move to Hendrick Motorsports, leaving his father's company. After some complications with bringing the number 8 with him, Earnhardt started to drive in number 88, a number his grandfather previously drove in the 1950s. With the number 88, Earnhardt earned his second Daytona 500 win in 2014. Earnhardt is currently the only third-generation NASCAR champion in history. August 8th, 1988, Wrigley Field turned on the lights and held its first night game. Previously, Wrigley was the only baseball park that didn't allow night games. When the idea was introduced in 1982, residents of the neighborhood argued the park should stay dark, leading to a ban of night games. The Cubs persisted, and a city ordinance was passed that allowed a maximum of 18 night games per season. The first night game in Wrigley Field saw the Cubs take a victory over the Mets 6-4. Go Cubs go! For more features on the number 88, check out our Twitter page. I'm Blake Keller for By the Numbers. Back to you, Jake and Cheryl at the desk.
Thanks, Blake.
This past Friday, Loyola co-ed business fraternity Alpha Kappa Psi hosted a volleyball tournament to benefit Challenged Athletes Foundation, a charity that gives young people with mental and physical disabilities the opportunity to participate in athletics. This is the second time that AK Psi has hosted this event, but the group is looking to make it a tradition in years to come. In total, there were 36 participants, and the event raised $260 for the Challenged Athletes Foundation. Coordinator of the event, sophomore Lucy Jin, was pleased with the turnout. To get involved with AK Psi, you can attend an information session or go to their website, akpsiluc.com.
What goes well with buffalo wings and football? Fantasy football. Madeline Kenney recently got the opportunity to talk to self-proclaimed fantasy football analyst Dylan Conover.
It's the beginning of week 3 of the NFL, and things are beginning to heat up. The rivalry between friends is not what jersey is on their backs, but rather whose fantasy team they're playing this week. Dylan Conover believes fantasy football is ideal for the average sports fan because they're in control of their own personal team.
I like the Bears, but the Bears are 0-2 right now. But my fantasy team is doing really well. So even though the Bears might not be doing so great and it might be hard to watch them on TV, you still watch certain players because, well, I want Matt Forte. I want the running back. I want him to do well because he's on my fantasy team. And so that's what keeps you tuning in, not just to your own team, but to all the teams in the NFL.
Although fantasy football can seem complicated, it is not as complex as some think. Each league has different rules, but on average, each league has 10 to 12 teams, and each team has 8 to 10 players the team owner drafts before the season begins. Individual players accumulate points based on statistics in games, including yards and touchdowns. The team with the most points wins. Conover believes that he has discovered the science behind drafting the perfect fantasy team.
And I think to lock down the running back position first. Usually the way I would go in terms of picking players, I would go running back, and then I'd go wide receiver, and then I'd usually go back for a second running back because the trends usually go that way, running back, wide receiver, and you can still find usually some really good running backs left over from the first round. And then I don't usually pick a quarterback until like the 4th or 5th round of a draft because there's a lot of quarterbacks that can do well.
For Conover, the best advice he can give someone new is to be diligent and just go after it.
So my advice to it, people that are thinking about it, is just do it because you'll come out with a greater appreciation of the game and a lot more knowledge of it as well.
For the Rambler Sports Locker, I'm Madeline Kenney.
Hey Cheryl, my fantasy team's going to kick your team's butt this weekend.
Sure it will. The men's soccer team played against former Horizon League foe Butler last Saturday, where sophomore Elliot Collier scored his first goal of the season. His goal sent the game into double overtime, where both teams dueled out to the end, finishing the game in a tie of 1-1. Head coach Neil Jones praised the team for being a resilient group with a never give up, never say die attitude, but noted he was disappointed in the overall defense and that they will need to get back to a good week of practice before the start of the Missouri Valley Conference play on Friday. The Ramblers will be playing Bradley in Peoria, Illinois at 7 p.m.
If the phrase "you are a product of your environment" is true, Loyola is clearly becoming a successful product of the Missouri Valley Conference. The honeymoon stage is over as Loyola has entered its 3rd year in the MVC. Rambler sports teams are now reaping the benefits of the change. Women's volleyball has won 10 straight, men's soccer has not lost in their last 5 matchups, and women's soccer beat former Horizon League foe Milwaukee for the first time in 7 years. The out-of-conference schedules have been so successful simply because the conference mashups have been so much better. This season, the seniors are the only players to have competed in the Horizon League. It is clear that the new Missouri Valley recruits have been much better, and across the board, Loyola sports are poised to make a splash in the Valley. Let's just hope that they can sustain this hot start when it matters later in the season.
There's been a lot of press surrounding Pope Francis's trip to the U.S. this week, but there's one pressing topic that hasn't received any attention. Over to the Ramble for more.
Hi, welcome to this week's Ramble. I'm your host, Bridget Murphy, and I'm here with Maddie Kenney and Dylan Conover. And like you said, the Pope touched down on Tuesday in the United States for his first trip here. And the news coverage has just been astronomical. There is a 24-hour Pope Watch you can find. Right now, CNN is showing the Pope Brigade down a 5th Avenue in New York, and you can follow his itinerary. But nobody's talking about something that's very near and dear to our hearts here at the Sports Locker. Football. If you were the Pope, who would you choose as your favorite NFL team? Maddie.
Well, Bridget, it's very simple. It has to be the Saints. And you want to know why it has to be the Saints?
Why does it have to be the Saints?
Because it's the Saints. In the U.S., like yesterday, he canonized the first saint that was canonized on USA territory. So, like, that's a huge step, one. So why wouldn't he go for the Saints? I mean, you also have that Hail Mary play from back in 2006 against the Atlanta Falcons.
I'm sure the Pope does love Hail Marys.
I think so, too. And so there's no other team that can equivalent to the Saints. I mean, their cheerleaders are called angels. So obviously they have something religious going on there. Case in point.
Yeah, I mean, those are all really good points. But I think when you're talking about Pope Francis, you need to remember where Pope Francis comes from. And you have to remember his name wasn't Francis to begin with. His name was Jorge, which in English is George. And so who better with the name of George to go for and to associate with than George Halas? Not only a co-founder of the NFL, but the founder of the Chicago Bears, our Chicago Bears. Not only that, but George Halas' daughter, Virginia McCaskey, she's a very avid Catholic. I've met her multiple times, and she talks about how her Catholic faith is super important to her and how she looks up to Pope Francis. So I really think it's a no-brainer. I think it's got to be the Chicago Bears.
Dylan, I'm going to go right back to you on this one. If the Pope is such a big Bears fan, how do you explain their performance this year?
Well, that's another thing I was thinking about. Pope Francis, being a good Catholic, he is the Pope, is a strong proponent of all the things that, the New Testament, that the Bible tells us. And one of those things is the Beatitudes. And one of those Beatitudes is, blessed are the meek and humble, for they will inherit the earth. They will inherit the good things. And I think when you're looking at our Chicago Bears right now, they are a very humble team. They're 0-2. They're arguably the worst team in the NFC and the NFL right now. And I think that that's something that Pope Francis would be really attracted to because, they are humbled right now, but that only means that they're going to be raised up even higher. And I think no one better than Pope Francis would be there, at the helm with them as they do that.
But does making them 0-2 make them humble? Is that what makes them humble?
Well, I think
having a losing record?
I think, well, yeah, for starters,
how does that make you humble?
Since last season, they've given up the most points in the NFL. They had two 50-point losses last year. They just got blown out by the Cardinals, another founding NFL team, and another team Pope Francis might like. I think they've been humbled. They just lost their starting quarterback, Jay Cutler, Jimmy Clausen. He says he's excited to play the Seahawks right now. They're favored to lose by over 2 touchdowns, but they think it's going to be a fun time. If the Bears aren't humbled right now, I want their pride because that would be unshakable for me.
Closing comments. Maddie.
It's the Saints.
It's the Saints. Dylan?
You just got to remember your roots. Pope Francis, his name was Jorge. He wants to associate with a George Halas. And not only that, the Bears' current chairman, George McCaskey. It's George. It's the Bears.
George. Okay. Unfortunately, Dylan, I'm going to have to go with Maddie on this one. The canonization of the first U.S. Saint is a huge deal. Pope loves saints. You can't really argue with that. So back to you guys at the desk.
From everyone at the Rambler Sports Locker, we understand the sensitivity of this topic. It is our hope that having educated discussions about this issue will help inform the public on the details.
Hopefully, the Holy Father can make time in his busy schedule to watch some NFL before returning to Rome Sunday night. But unfortunately, that is all the time we have today. I'm Cheryl.
And I'm Jake Mazanke. Tune in to next week's episode of Rambler Sports Locker for an up-to-date look at Loyola sports and beyond. And as always, don't forget to turn out the lights.